I'm working on a new laptop here. Um, Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host Alan Orrick with my partner Sean Williams. How you doing tonight, Sean?
Trying to see all those things hanging behind you.
Oh, that's my 2009 Saints poster.
Okay.
Oh, you're gonna make me stretch the wrong arm. That one's the '79 Saints roster. Mike Carney,
Oh,
his birthday was the other day. Let's see. I got this one here is Tim Hightower getting ready to run over a Falcon, and that's Craig Hayward. You can't really see that one. Let me see. There you go. That's
yeah,
Craig
there he
Hayward.
is.
So yeah.
Ironhead.
And then the one up top, that's that's Kamara High leaping over a Ram player from a couple years ago. And then the pictures you
Yeah, I
can't
remember
see up
that.
here in the top, I got Sproles from 2011, and I got Marcus Williams picking off a pass right in front of Julio Jones from 2017. So try to
You
put a
just
little bit
got
of
the whole
everything back
gang.
there. Yeah, I try and put a little bit of everything back there. So, but that's Mike
Well,
Carney in the Atlanta Georgia Dome too.
yeah. And we need to take a minute and wish a happy birthday to the most reliable kicker in New Orleans since Morton Anderson, Will Lutz. Today is his birthday.
Happy birthday, Will.
Yeah. You could do us a solid by making an appearance, but we won't hold it against you if you don't.
At this rate, I don't know what's going to happen. That was one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight. Was
Well, I mean, these players could make an appearance on a podcast because they ain't going to be doing a hell of a lot else right now.
the director of the union, NFL Players Association, doesn't want them to have any preseason games at all. And the only thing the league's
And
officially
I think
canceled.
I think that's a very real possibility if you want to know the honest to God truth. Because I mean, they've already canceled the Hall of Fame game and the enshrinement ceremonies, which is basically the much ballyhooed beginning to the preseason, and which obviously leads into the season. That's the event that is used as a kickoff for the whole thing.
Right.
I don't really and truly. I can't gauge or see just exactly how this is going to play out, and it concerns me. And I think that you made the comment a month or two ago how we could very easily see this done in stages where we start the season playing games in front of no fans, and then from there we move to limited seating capacity, and then see how that all works out and plays out before we actually see what we've come to know and love as a live NFL football game.
Well, that was last week they were talking about the first 8 rows in the dome they were going to block off to protect the players. Here's a thing that they're trying with basketball, and I can't see it's possible in football. They want to basically put the players in basketball in a bubble, okay? And in that bubble, that's how they're going to make sure they can't be cross-contaminated by anybody else. Everyone's already been tested, that we tested, before each game or whatever, and and they're going to see how this works out. I can't. That's 15 players, maybe 3 coaches, 4 coaches. I can't see you doing that with a 54-man roster, even though 45 are active on game day. 53-man roster. 20 plus coaches, plus equipment people, plus trainers, plus there's a doctor there for concussion protocol, and you've got a physical game where people sweating on each other, they're breathing on each other, they're tackling one another. I just, I don't know how this is going to work out, because even if you play in an empty stadium, what happens, and I think we've talked about this before, what happens when you've got, I don't know, let's just say, Tommy Lee Lewis is back on the roster. Let's say Tommy Lee Lewis is flags as positive for coronavirus. So now you have to isolate all the receivers that are in the receiving room, for 14 days. So what do you do for a receiving core? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say they don't meet in the receiving room. Let's just say he tested positive after a practice. What do? You isolate the entire team, and okay, now it's your bye week because your team can't play, and we're gonna have a 2-week bye week now, and try and juggle the whole schedule. I mean, I don't know how this is going to work at all. And here we are. I think training camp officially opens on the 28th, which is 3 weeks from today. And the league doesn't know what they're going to do yet. They have to make these decisions. And they're all like, oh, they got time. They got time. No, they don't have time. They really don't have time to make these decisions. You can test them all before training camp. And you can isolate them kind of in training camp, but what happens once training camp is broken and these players can go home again?
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know how this is going to work, and I don't think the league knows what they're going to do.
No, I agree completely with you. I don't think they have the slightest clue what's going on, what they're going to do, just like the rest of us. I mean, there's a hell of a lot more questions than there is answers at this point. And until there's more answers to the questions, they're going to err on the side of caution. I have to believe that.
Well, you got that NFL Players Association president right now who's out there saying he's going to be all over this. And he's going to be demanding a lot of answers from the league. And his number one thing is, we've got to get rid of preseason. Okay, we'll get rid of preseason. Coaches like to use that to evaluate players. You're pretty much condemning any of these new players.
Yep.
How are they going to evaluate any of these new players? Because you've had no off-season program at all. And you can only do so much in practice. You've got to have opportunities in game-type situations, because you remember we were talking about Emmanuel Butler and Lil Jordan Humphreys last year. And Emmanuel Butler caught everything that was thrown to him in practice. He was like Andy Tanner out there, Onome Ojo. But when it came to game time, he was dropping passes. He wasn't really doing his job. But Lil Jordan Humphreys, who couldn't catch a cold naked in Alaska in practice, was catching everything in the preseason games. So how do you make this decision?
Well, you know as well as I do that practice reps are different than game reps. And you can do a controlled scrimmage with your own team, but those reps aren't going to be the same as players that you don't compete with on a regular basis. It's going to be a completely different world.
Yeah, it does. It is,
but at the same time, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, that, and Paul is exactly right. This is a virus with a 99% survival rate. It is. It's a virus, but, there's a 14-day quarantine period, and the problem is you're contagious when you don't know you have it. Then you have the, people who are asymptomatic. There's a lot of things. Mr. Allen was playing Chic Good Time song. Oh, that he must be talking about an old show. Yeah, before I got in trouble with YouTube, John Butler song. Emmanuel Butler, no relations. You're not the heavier, slower version of him. I thought you were. Man, good to see you, John. Yeah.
Hey, before we go any further, I would like to tell everyone that if they haven't already, make the time to go and check out Life of a Saint, Will Smith by John Butler, a great friend of our show, part of the Saints, New Orleans Saints syndicate. It's amazing. I don't have the words to tell you. I know that John put a lot of work into this article, and he spent a lot of time to make it something very special, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I'll text
John,
you my address.
yeah, John got high compliments from Nick Underhill, so that says it all. That says it all. I mean, and I've gotten a lot of people asking me, telling me about the column that he did on Will Smith, and he was lucky enough to get a lot of perspectives from a lot of players and coaches. One of the things, without really ruining the whole story, Sean Payton commented, and one of the things that was in the story was that there were plans to bring Will Smith back to the team as an assistant coach, defensive line coach.
I remember
Probably, not that different than, he was number 66. He's the pass rush specialist. Brian Young, not much different than what Brian Young has done. So yeah, that's the kind of insight you get in that story. And of course, unfortunately, Will was killed a few days before they were ready to make that offer to him. So
Yeah.
it was
He had just graduated from college too.
yeah, he got his degree.
Yep.
He got his degree from Ohio State. Yes.
It was a terrible tragedy, and every once in a while a player comes along, and I don't want this to be misconstrued, because it's really easy to talk about how great a player is after he's gone. That seems like the feel good thing to do, but Will Smith was actually the real deal. He was a great player. He was a great teammate, and I think the play that I'll always remember the most by Will Smith was not the interception that he got in the playoffs, when Tracy Porter picked off Peyton Manning and started down the field. Will Smith got Peyton and punished him. We'll just put it that way.
I have a Colts fan who is a friend of mine, and yeah, he's like, that like clipping to me. That should be illegal block in the back. He said it as a joke. I mean, he was honestly, he was the first one to call me up. As soon as the game was over, I'm like, who the hell was calling me? His name is Barry. He lives up in Indianapolis, and he's the first one to call me. To say, man, and he says, we've gotten ours, so I'm not upset. I would have liked to have gotten the second one, but we got ours. But I'm really, really glad you guys got yours, because it's a special feeling. It always is. So
there's fans of each different franchise in the NFL, most franchises have had the opportunity to feel what it's like to get that Lombardi trophy, or at least be there competing for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you lose the Super Bowl, you're one of the last two teams standing, which that's
Absolutely.
not a lot. That's not a lot of consolation if you lose in the Super Bowl. But
no, but I mean, you know that of 32 teams, only one team's going to end their season if they get to the postseason with a win.
See, that's the thing that sucks about the playoffs, making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't win the Super Bowl, your season ends in heartbreak.
Yep, it does. It does.
But anyway, getting back to the original point, not just the Will Smith article. John has done an amazing job of covering this entire series of articles that he's. Yeah, don't talk to they have no clue. John's done a magnificent job on this entire series of The Life of a Saint. articles. And if you're really a fan of the team, you owe it to yourself to check his work out. It's just it's amazing.
You know, when you get to talking about the Super Bowl, it's the Lions, the Browns, Houston, because we got to count the Oilers and the Texans. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and
Well, see, I don't count the Oilers because the Oilers became the Titans, and the Titans got there and finished 1 yard away.
yeah,
But
but they don't. I mean, it's not the same franchise. It's not the city of Houston, so you know, it's a
well,
different
yeah.
different
Well, the
franchise.
Texans, yes,
Yeah,
but now the Oilers, I
but you know, it's like the scene in Animal House when they go to the house. You know, when Larry and Flounder end up at the house, the Lions and the Browns are essentially Juggish, uh, the dude in the wheelchair who's with the sun and he's blind. It's just that's where you are. That's when you don't go to the Super Bowl at all. In the 54 years now that the Super Bowl's been in existence, you have not been in the Super Bowl. This is where you are. You know.
and then
Oh,
you have teams like the Atlanta Falcons. No, I'm not going there. Let's move on. I'm sorry I interrupted you on all that.
well, I kind of lost my train of thought when we were talking before we got to the talking about Will Smith, but I was just going to say, as far as and Calvin brought this point up, um, if you have no
Is
preseason games, the undrafted free agents really have a hard time making a team, and you got a team like the Saints right now, whom at least one undrafted free agent, maybe two, not only makes the team, but has a chance to have an impact on the franchise, during that season. And they're not going to get that shot because if you don't have preseason games, those guys don't have the opportunity to shine because there's only so many reps you have in preseason. And if you're limiting contact in practice, which they have done in the past already, and you have a pretty loaded roster anyway, the odds are somebody being able to leapfrog past a Traquan Smith or kind of like what Pierre Thomas did to the running back from Ohio State. I can't think of his name. Antonio. It'll come to me in a second, but the 4th-round pick from Ohio State, the running back, he got to beat out in 2007 to make the team. You don't have those opportunities to play. You don't have those opportunities to shine. You don't have the opportunities to show what you can do. You look at a guy like Kyrie Robertson. Robertson had an outstanding preseason back in 2013, and that helped him make the roster.
His preseason, you're exactly right. His preseason in 2013 is what secured his place on the roster that year. He led the team in rushing and in scoring that preseason.
Absolutely. And it's just, and not going to have those kind of opportunities. So this will be a year. If we don't have if we have training camp only and no preseason games, this will be a year that you'll see a lot of undrafted free agents either not make the team or you're going to see they're going to push to expand the number of practice squad players. Yeah. So you have an opportunity to keep these guys, to keep studying them and see what you can do with them.
Yeah, just in case it gets to the point where you have to put players in quarantine so that you cover your own butt in that.
Yeah, and then that's going to be scary enough. Yeah, Calvin's right. Henderson, Stallworth, Tuttle, Harris, Saints. It's there's a lot of them. Lil Jordan Humphreys, Ganderson. We waited for him to come out of jail, to make the team. And first game he's there, he gets a sack. So it's. I agree, Calvin. I think 15 is probably a good number of undrafted free agents on the practice squad, or just players on the practice squad, just because there's so many unknowns, and you're going to need bodies this year.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate here. The other side of the coin is Uh, okay. Obviously, the NFL is a press to print their own money. There is no business in the world that generates the revenue that the National Football League generates. Whether
Yeah.
you're talking about ticket sales, merchandise, the whole nine. Um, the richest people in the world are the team owners. What happens when that, say, for an example, that first 4 games of the season, if we're doing it in stages, as you and I were talking about earlier, that first 4 games of the season, you're playing for no fans. You're paying Patrick Mahomes, you're paying him $8,000 a play. What happens when you're having to pay out all that money and you're not getting any back? TV rights are great, but they're not going to cover what putting 92,000 asses in the seats is going to generate. When that starts happening, and obviously these teams owners start to lose a little bit of that cash flow, changes will happen. And the only thing that I can compare this to is several years ago when the AIDS epidemic was running rampant, and the NBA enacted this thing where if you get a cut, you're benched. So how are they going to handle this when it's a virus? It doesn't have to be a cut. You can sweat on somebody and transfer this. You can cough on somebody. You can breathe on somebody. And this, there's so many variables involved in this. I just really, I don't know how this is going to play out.
Well, that's why I said I think they're going to test all these players before every game. And anybody that shows, you could be asymptomatic, but anybody that shows any kind of symptoms gets sat down and put in quarantine and isolated.
What would be really ironic would be if what killed the virus was anabolic steroids.
Don't tell Donald Trump that. He'll probably trumpet that one too.
Oh my God.
But I don't know. I honestly don't know how they're going to handle any of this stuff.
I don't either. And it scares me because it stands the possibility of seriously affecting the way that the season is going to play out. And the only thing that I can compare that to is like, I forget the year, but the year that several games were dropped due to the players' strike.
82.
Yeah, that wasn't a real season.
No, 82. It was they played 2 games and then they went on strike for 9 weeks, and or 7 weeks, and then you had 9 weeks. You had 7 weeks, 9 games total, but 7-week season at the end of the season, and nobody showed up for the games.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was 82. That was the first strike, because what happened, because you had no football for 9 weeks, drove what they did in 1987 when they had the second strike, and
Scabs.
We lost 1 game, and then they played 3 replacement games. That was I know, Danny. 4-5, missed the playoffs. Saints started 3-1 in 82, and they had a good shot of making the playoffs, but they lost their last 3 games. In fact, you want to see, it's on YouTube, the Washington Redskins game. You get to see Guido Merkins start at quarterback because Stabler was hurt. And Dave Wilson had gotten injured in preseason. He was out the whole year.
That is absolutely a blessing.
My old English professor used to call Dave Wilson the Antichrist.
I think that I like Heath Schuler as a quarterback more than I liked Dave Wilson, because every time Dave Wilson run into the huddle, it's like take your hat off, put it over your heart, and bid this one adieu because it's over.
Um, it's this one's on YouTube as well. Dave Wilson's finest hour as a Saint. It was in 1987,
His
Cincinnati
finest
Bengals
hour
game.
probably was 15 minutes.
Yeah. Oh no, it was a half. It was so 30 minutes. But it was against Cincinnati Bengals in 1987. They knocked Bear out with a knee injury, and they were kicking the hell out of the Saints. They were beating them 24-3, and the Saints uh, ended up winning the game, 41-24. They went on like a 31 or yeah. It was a big win. It's on YouTube. You can find it. Um, the second half is another thing worth watching. They're terrible in the first half. It's horrible in the first half. Um, and the offensive line is
Cocaine
just
wore
getting
off at
manhandled.
halftime.
Huh?
The cocaine wore off at halftime.
It was just an ugly game. But the 82 Redskins Saints game is out there on YouTube. The 82 49ers Saints game where you see Ken Stabler go up against Joe Montana. And it was a muddy, rainy day in Candlestick, and Ricky Jackson got an interception, almost scored a touchdown. But that was a huge win that season, and I think it pushed the Saints to 3-1. It was 2 games after the strike ended, because the first game after the strike was a game against the Chiefs, which they won that one. The game, it is on YouTube. The game from 82, the week before the strike, or the final game before the strike, because the strike happened Monday night. As soon as that Monday Night Football game was over, the strike happened and the players didn't show up. There was no football. Was the Saints versus the Bears in Soldier Field, one of the hardest hitting games I can remember as a Saints fan at that point. I mean, they were just waylaying into each other. It was unbelievable. I mean, you just see Frank Watlett, just jacking people. Everything today would be a flag. I mean, they're launching into receivers as they're coming across. Receivers looking the other way, and they're just drawing a bead on him and just tag him. I mean, the things that, there'd be a sea of flags coming down, for these kind of plays. But it was the Saints won, I think, 10-0. It was a gripping game, but that was Bum Phillips football.
Yeah.
Don't your offense does enough, it's efficient enough, your defense and special teams win the game.
Well, that's better than Jim Mora. The pregame for Jim Mora has got to be, okay, guys, just get us to the 50. Morton will save us.
That's not actually too far from the truth.
Well, I mean, his whole and I could be wrong about this, but I mean, I've held this grudge for years. You get to the 50-yard line and your offensive philosophy completely. Well, I'll give this one to Carl Smith instead of Jim Mora, but I give it to Jim Mora because he backed Carl Smith to the bitter end. You get to the 50-yard line, and as you've stated on here a million times, you got 3rd and 12, and you run a 10-yard pattern. Come on, guys. It's okay. Morton's going to kick it.
Yeah. It was when you have to remember, when you watch these games, when you go back and watch these games, don't think about the offense in terms of what you're used to seeing Drew Brees do, because you'll just go insane watching. You'll go insane watching these games. You're like, what the hell kind of call was that? Because there's very little motion, very little, trickery. They run the same basic plays over and over and over again. I mean, it's like comparing the Wright brothers plane to, the stealth bomber. When you're looking at these offenses in comparison, it really is. I mean,
it is. But I mean, that's indicative of the time then and the time now, though. And you could say that probably about the majority of the teams in the league. I think probably the only exception would maybe be Miami. Once once they got Marino, they were pretty consistent in the offense that they ran because Shula turned Marino loose because he knew what kind of player that he had.
Yeah, and going back that far back, I mean, with Dan Marino, the biggest problem you had with Marino is you had no running game, and which was ironic given that the Dolphins' greatest success was running behind Larry Zonka,
Yeah.
Jim Kick, who just passed away not long ago, a couple weeks ago, he passed away, and Mercury Morris, and
Well, you
that
you had
big
the
offensive lineman with Larry Little.
yeah, you had the potential of that coming back into play with the drafting of David Overstreet until his untimely death. And
Yeah,
once that happened, they never. I mean, you had Tony Nathan, but by the time Marino got there, Tony Nathan was older and probably past his prime. Um, and
and
Shula just turned him loose.
and Marino won you enough games that you never were in a position to get high enough in the draft to go get a great running back,
Yeah,
or the Dolphins would pass on great running backs because they were constantly trying to build that defense. Because the Dolphins went through from Bill Onsparger and the Killer Bees in '82 until Schuler retired in '95. I think the Dolphins went through like 7 defensive coordinators. And I could be wrong.
that sounds about
I
right.
know of at least 5 of them they had.
Yeah, that
And
that sounds about right.
but and I'm talking 82 to 95. So that's a good amount of time. And I think about what Dan Fouts said. When the Air Coryell couldn't get to the Super Bowl. He says you're constantly trying to build your defense, and what happens is you fire coaches, and that means a change in philosophy. So you got to get rid of the
Yeah,
players you had, and you got to bring in new players to fit this new defense they're going to put in. And that sets you back,
it
and your
does.
offense is running on a clock.
Yeah,
And this was the thing that Saints fans had to kind of go through for a little while. With you go from Greg Williams to Steve Spagnuolo to Rob Ryan to Dennis Allen. Um,
Rob Ryan.
but Spagnuolo and Ryan both kind of set you back a little bit because
Yeah,
Ryan wanted certain kind of players to run his defense, and it was a 3-4 concept. So, when we were talking about Will Smith earlier, Will Smith's one of those players who did not fit that defense. Um, you're bringing in guys like Jarius Byrd. You're bringing in guys like because now Ryan wants to push this off on Peyton, but he also wanted to incorporate some elements of Seattle secondary in there, the Legion of Boom. So he went that single high safety, and that changes the way Rob Ryan likes his defenses, and all those things. So you're bringing in players like Stanley Jean Baptiste, who you think is going to be the big physical corner to fill your man coverage Seattle kind of defense, and he doesn't. And that's a second round pick. You blew that. He turns out he's not a very good football player at all because he doesn't make it on any team. But I
yeah,
mean, that's why you end up 7-9, and you burn off years of Drew Brees at his
yeah,
peak because you're going 7-9. You're basically doing to him what you did to Dan Marino. Marino
yep.
had to throw every down just to
Dan
make,
Fouts too.
yeah, just to be competitive. And you go 7-9, don't even make the playoffs, and it's because your defense is horrible. That was the problem the Dolphins had, the problem the Chargers had, all the way until
I
they
think that
fire Coryell.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that
No,
you can
no,
look at the offensive philosophy of Air Coryell, the Miami Dolphins
mm-hmm.
under Marino or with Marino, not under Marino. You can. you can never, your offensive philosophy can never be bombing someone into submission, because it never works. If you don't have a defense, you're not going to win at this level. If you want to see proof of that, Eric Coryell, Miami Dolphins with Marino, probably one of the best pure passers this game has ever produced, Dan Marino. They made the Super Bowl once with him. Dan Fouts never got to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You move that forward. You look at teams like the Atlanta Falcons. Hey, we got Julio Jones. We got Mohamed Sanu. We just gonna score so many points that you can't keep up. And you get to the Super Bowl and you play a real team with a real defense, and you get your ass handed to you.
Okay, so backing up a little bit here, in the 80s, the Jim Moore, Bum Phillips era, you look at the AFC and the way they were constructed in the AFC and that critical draft of 1983 where you had all the quarterbacks go.
Man, that was probably the most incredible draft ever.
But look where they went. They all went in the AFC. Marino, I'm going to throw in the bad ones too. Elway, but I'm throwing the bad ones in too. Blackledge.
Ken
O'Brien. Steve Young, although he spent time in the spent time in the USFL. Yeah, he did come back over to Tampa, and then he ended up with San Francisco, but backing up Joe Montana until the 90s. And Jim Kelly, who was also in USFL with the Gamblers and went to the Buffalo Bills. Okay, so you had all those quarterbacks go in the AFC. In the NFC, you won with defense and with a running game. And I'm talking about the Redskins with the Hogs.
That's right.
And Joe Bugle, we talked about him last week. Redskins with the Hogs. Then you go to the 85 Bears and what they did.
Wow.
And then the 86 Giants and what they did. And you had Montana and Bill Walsh in 84 and 88 and 89 was George Seifert. But in the meantime, you had, and then of course 87 with the Redskins again, and again it's still the Hogs, different running back. It's not Riggins this time. It's George Rogers, and then later Timmy Smith. But you're talking about. I have a friend of mine, Tony. He loved Jim Kelly. He loved him from Jim Kelly.
I have a lot of respect for Jim Kelly, and for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Of course, anybody that knows me knows what those obvious reasons are.
Right.
The term Kelly tough doesn't even come close.
Well, this is where I was getting to with this. So Jim Moore and Bum Phillips both saw this. Okay, they could see this coming. Now, Bum was already on his way out. He was trying to rebuild the Houston Oilers for one last run without the Steelers dealing with him. And his players got old. 83 was his high point. And then his players got old, and he stopped coaching and stopped caring, and eventually he had to go. But Jim Moore could see this, that, okay, they've got the quarterbacks. We're going to build a team much like the Bears and the Giants, and to an extent the Cleveland Browns over in the AFC, but still, that basic grounded out. We're going to beat you with our defense, our special teams, and we're going to beat you with a running game and a quarterback who doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can see how he thought that philosophy would work. The problem was he had to play the 49ers twice in his own division.
Yeah.
And the 49ers could beat you 100 different ways.
Yeah, they could beat you on offense. They could beat you on defense. They could beat you on special teams, and they could beat you just by planning the right game plan.
And they had the defense too.
Yeah,
People underestimate that defense, but they really had the defense.
they did.
And the basic problem of Jim Moore's teams was that when he had the running game, he didn't have the quarterback. And when his quarterback started playing well enough, he didn't have the running game anymore. And his
Yeah.
defense was good enough to win 10 plus games. But when in the postseason, when he needed his running back to take over the game and win games, they could not do it because the running game was not consistent enough. Ruben Mays, again, my friend Tony would love you, Chad, because he was the same way. He was a huge. I mean, he would talk about Buffalo Bills. I would get sick of hearing about it because he's like
I pulled
he
for the Buffalo
loved.
Bills 4 years in a row,
Now,
and one of my coolest friends here in town, Joel Clark, and my mentor actually, Nick Harrison, I got my start being.
Doesn't Joel Clark sell insurance or something on short term insurance? I used to hear this all the time on the radio.
No, Joel Clark is an air conditioner
Select
man
quote.
here in West Monroe.
This is select quote with Joel Clark. It's like some sort of like an answer machine kind of thing. I remember this on radio. Anyway,
the way that I got my start in doing this sort of thing was with the professor Nick Harrison, my biggest influence, one of my closest and dearest friends, and they are both members, diehard card carrying, break the table members of the Bills Mafia, and I pulled for the Bills all 4 times that they went to the Super Bowl, especially the last 2 against the Cowboys. Yes.
Well, the only I can remember watching the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs, and the Don Beebe will be one of my favorite players from those Bills teams, because, and
Steve Tasker and Don Beebe. Yeah,
but Don Beebe epitomized for me the never give up attitude.
Yeah,
when he ran down Leon Lett and knocked that ball out of the end zone for a touchback. You're getting your ass kicked. This game's over. This is just the final play.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, there's more time left, but this is really the final play. Leon Lett walking into the end zone, got the football out, showing it off, and he ran him down and knocked it out of the end zone for a touchback. And,
who reminds me of Don Beebe?
Who's that?
Our number 7.
Oh, yeah.
He does, man.
If he gets knocked over, because I remember this game vividly, and I thought he got killed. This was the playoff game against the Cleveland Browns, and it was in the dog pound. And you see it on NFL film still. And Don Beebe got flipped head over heels, landed on his head, boom, bounced up. You could see the ball and you could see his head bounce in slow motion on the thing. And again, I'm going to age myself terribly, but this was also the era of breakdancing, when people would spin on their heads. Remember that?
You know why they call it breakdancing?
Yeah, and they used to.
You're not doing it right if you don't break something.
Well, yeah. Well, this is the warning about breaking your vertebrae in your neck, and guys would balance on the top of their head and do the spin, and you'd have kids getting killed doing this breakdance thing. In fact, the Michael Jackson or Jackson 5 video for the song "Torture," they got this. You remember that song "Torture"?
I must have missed that one.
You must have missed. I have this album. This is the album where the first release.
I never got past Thriller.
Okay, well, the Jackson. This is the first Jackson's album that came out since Off the Wall and Thriller, and that the Jacksons kind of disappeared in the. Jermaine had his albums, but Tito didn't get one.
This must have been the album that they toured in support of for the Victory Tour.
Yeah, this was the album Victory.
Okay.
And the first release off that album was a song called "State of Shock," which was Michael Jackson and Mick Jagger
singing. Me in a state of shock.
Yeah,
State of shock. Yeah, I
yeah,
remember that.
yeah, yeah. And Mick Jagger at the end going, "Look at me, look at me." Anyway, um, anyway, the
Mick
next
Jagger.
song,
Oh
the
God.
next release off that album was a song called "Torture," and it's a S&M kind of theme video. And then there's one sequence where it's very Ray Harryhausen. And if you don't know who that man is,
Say that again.
Ray Harryhausen, I can't say his name right now. Harryhausen, do you know who that is? Stop motion
No.
photographer. He would do, if you've ever seen Jason the Argonauts, Sinbad in the Eye of the Tiger, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Clash of the Titans with
I've
Mark
seen
with
Clash of the Titans.
okay. Well, you know the Medusa and the Kraken and
Mm-hmm.
Pegasus and all those things are little models where he moves little pieces at a time and photographs it and then moves it again and oh my God, Chad, why do you admit this?
Okay, we got something on Chad now. Hey, it ain't real until we see the proof. That's all.
Chad, you want me to play some Herbie Hancock Rocket? You can go ahead and start breakdancing for me. Anyway, Ray Harryhausen was the one who pioneered this stop motion photography, and it was basically like animation. You move a little piece of a model a little bit at a time each time, and you play it all back in regular speed. It creates, just like animation, it creates a series of movements. And so that's how I would make these models move, because this is long before the days of CGI.
Yeah.
That's how they would make these things work. Anyway, in the movie Jason and the Argonauts, they have, that sounds horrible. You know, that every time you get an alert on your phone, you know, you hear that buzzing sound. But anyway,
Well, I've got it all turned off, man.
I hear you.
Jeez.
Anyway, in the movie Jason the Argonauts, he has this skeletal army that rises up out of the ground.
I remember that.
And they fight him with swords. Well, they have a very yeah. We go through it all. Anyway.
That's funny to me because I know who Turbo and Ozone are.
I got you. But we go through. They go through that same kind of sequence in the video for Torture, where they have the skeletons come up and they start breakdancing and doing the things like the Jacksons, and then one of them the skeleton gets on his head and does this little spin, and you see the neck break and it collapses on the ground. And so a long way to get to the point when Don Beebe got flipped over head over heels by the Cleveland Browns. I'm like, the man's dead. He's dead. You know, I mean, he broke his neck, but he came back, you know, because back then you used to just, yeah. Of course, my brother knows this. Made from the teeth of the Hydra. Of course, you know this. But yeah. And Sinbad and Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Tom Baker appears in that, and Tom Baker plays a wizard. And for those who like to watch Doctor Who, that movie was how the producers were convinced he would be the new Doctor. And that was the Doctor, of course, the Doctor that Americans were first experienced Doctor Who because of Tom Baker. And you watch it, and he's the Doctor in many ways. He's very dramatic, those big eyes, and you know, you can see why they liked him for the role, because it just, he really, for the scenes he was in, he just really stole the scenes. And it was a great decision that they made for him to play the fourth Doctor. But yeah, my brother and I used to spend a lot of times watching those old movies because my dad liked them. We won't talk about Beastmaster, though.
Oh, Tanya Roberts.
Oh God, I hate that freaking film. That movie must have come on HBO 1,000 times, and it never failed. My brother and my dad would have this movie on. I'd walk in to the same damn scene over and over and over again. The scene where he gets dumped inside the cow, and you see the udder of the cow just kind of drop as a human baby gets put in it. So that way he could talk to the animals like friggin' Doctor Doolittle. It was the most. It was the dumbest movie, and I think my brother and my dad watched it because they knew it drove me crazy. Because they watched this thing, and I was like, "This is so friggin' stupid. I'm losing IQ points just watching this. It's a good
And
movie."
as long as we're on the subject of music,
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
want to
we
take a
are.
minute.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean,
we are sort of.
I want to take a minute to say that we lost a legend, a certifiable American patriot,
Yeah.
and someone who took a great amount of pride in being an American and setting an example that everyone should respect and live up to. In Charlie Daniels yesterday, um, it was from what I understand, he lost his life after suffering a stroke. But me personally, I can say that I derived a lot of encouragement and a lot of inspiration from the example that Charlie Daniels set. And I wish to his family the sincerest condolences. And to him, I say thank you for being who and what you were.
Yeah. I was disappointed. Not disappointed. I was saddened to find out that he passed away because I first discovered Charlie Daniels the way a lot of people did. Hearing Devil Went Down to Georgia. But he was more than just country music. Although he of course appears in Urban Cowboy, in
Exactly.
Gillies he plays Orange Blossom Special. Um, but he also was big into. Oh, we're going to talk about this now. Is this what we're going to talk about, Danny? The Omen. This is for you, Damien. This is for you. We're gonna hang ourselves in front of a child's birthday party. Um. Anyway,
Okay, clearly that went sideways and I missed
yes,
some.
it did. Let me get back to talking about Charlie Daniels. I'm sorry, my brother's bringing up things from appearances of Doctor Who figures in other movies, and I mentioned The Omen, and he's yeah. Anyway,
You
um,
triggered an outburst, didn't you?
yes, I did. My brother and I watch a lot of movies, and my brother, he used to work in a movie theater too, so he was much more into movies even than I was, and especially horror movies. He would get these Fangoria magazines that were so disgusting that they had to wrap them in black plastic and mail it to us. You couldn't see the cover because it might
Yep.
offend somebody. My
Yep.
brother, cool special effects, man. So that was his thing.
I used to get that magazine, and the school that I went to in Oklahoma, the last school day
Video
before
store. Sorry.
Halloween, everybody got to come to school dressed up, and I would get Fangoria magazine and try to figure out how to dress myself as a.
Yeah. So anyway, talking about Charlie Daniels again. Charlie Daniels did. He was a pioneer also in Southern rock.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
you know, you listen to the song "The South's Going to Do It Again." It's not
Mm-hmm.
about the Confederacy, as some people may think, because based on the title, it's about Southern rock. And you hear him talk about, old brother Willie's getting soaking wet. Well, that's Wet Willie. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he's making references throughout the entire song to the Allman Brothers and
Mm-hmm.
Marshall Tucker and all the Southern rock musicians, Leonard Skinner. all the Southern rock musicians from that era, and Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and
Yeah.
all the places where they used to play, and and the thing I posted on my Facebook page, my favorite song from Charlie Daniels was "Legend of Woolly Swamp," only
I went to
because.
see them in concert. That was not counting the farewell tour of Motley Crue that I saw
Mhm.
a few years ago. Before that, the last concert that I went to was Marshall Tucker, Charlie Daniels, and uh, Hank Williams Jr.
Okay.
Now, I would not walk across that threshold over there to see Hank Williams Jr. because
Yeah.
he's a waste of flesh. He's a anyway. But Charlie Daniels opened the show with the Legend of Woolly Swamp, and
It,
it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. It was awesome.
to me, I equate that with when 38 Special plays Chain Lightning live on
Yes,
stage,
yes,
because
yes, 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 yes.
it's a special moment because the way he yeah. Here we go. I told you, you got to get him on one time. I'm gonna have to just take a break from the show, and it's gonna be you and my brother talking about wrestling.
I'm ready whenever Danny is, brother.
Yeah, because that will be the show.
Well, Danny, let me tell you, I went to WrestleMania 30 when it was in New Orleans, and the first stop of that weekend was I went to the Mid South Legends Fan Fest, and I had platinum VIP passes. I sat at the autograph table with Hacksaw Duggan for about 2 hours because we were both cancer survivors, and we were talking back and forth about that. It An awesome man. He was every bit what I expected him to be. He was just very accommodating and very genuine.
Yep. Yeah, my brother was the wrestling fan. That's the one you talk to. But I was just going to say, the Legend Woolly Swamp. That's one of the special songs in any music category, because it's like it's almost like a campfire, scare the crap out of you song. Because he talks it. The only
Yeah.
part he sings is the chorus. But
If you ever
just
go back in the woolly swamp, well, you better not go at night.
yeah. But my favorite part is always when he says, that was 50 years ago. You can go by there yet. There's a spot in the yard, the back of that shack, where the ground is always wet. And on certain nights when the moon is right, down by the dark footpath, you can hear two young men screaming. You can hear one old man laugh. Ba-dum-bum-bum. And it's like,
dude,
you
got the hair standing up and chill bump, man.
That is how you freak people out, because that whole sequence. And anybody that's heard a ghost story, I mean, that's how you tell that story. And it's just he doesn't sing it or anything like that. He just talks it to you in that low, gravelly voice, that makes it even creepier. The Taylor Boys of white trash living on Carver's Creek, that kind of stuff. It just
they had a song called "In America."
Yep.
And it came out, I want to say 79 to 80.
Yeah,
because that was the end of
the Iranian hostage crisis.
Yeah, it was during the towards the end of the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty. Well, the recorded version of it says you can go and lay your hands on a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to find he understands. Well, when they play it in concert, wherever they go, they equated it to the nearest NFL team.
Whatever NFL team.
When they played it here in Monroe, they said you can go and lay your hands on a New Orleans Saints fan.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Chad wants to bring us back. Oh yeah. We're talking about Patrick Mahomes' contract. Yeah, Simple Man 1991. I did listen to that one the other day, in fact. I just
Well,
happened to have that one on right before they announced his death, and yeah, it's creepy that I heard that song.
you
Um,
mentioned his involvement in the Southern rock movement. Um, a couple of years, or may have now it may have been quite a few years ago, but there was a documentary made called Freebird that covered the uh,
seen it.
Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
Charlie Daniels was
Hmm.
the driving force in that project.
He's also on in the show too.
Yeah, yeah,
He talks. Yeah, I watched it because I've seen quite a few things actually on Skinner, and Gary Rosenden describing that plane accident always bothers me because he says you don't realize how scary things can be until you start hearing that thump, 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 and it's top of the trees hitting the bottom of the aircraft as it's going down. And of course, they were killed because they didn't have any of their gear really stowed properly. When that plane hit, all that gear was thrown forward, and that's what killed Ronnie. Was they broke his neck? It hit him, broke his neck, and
yeah,
it killed Cassie and Steve as well.
yeah.
Um, okay, so real quick for Chad, um, Patrick Mahomes got paid 450. No, I'm sorry, 560
30.
million, 530 million.
I think it was
Half,
530.
yeah, 530, 477 of it is guaranteed. A 10-year deal, 10 years. The man, I think, will be turning 37. Maybe 36. I think he's under. I think he's 25 right now. Um,
Yep.
but he will be turning 36 or 37 when this contract is over.
He'll
Is this
never
how they're
see
going
the
to
end
do?
of this contract.
Is this how they're going to do things from now on? I mean, look, the guy was league MVP last year, Super Bowl
Super
MVP
Bowl
this year.
MVP.
I'm sorry, 2 years ago, league MVP 2 years ago, Super Bowl MVP this past year, threw 50 touchdowns his first year as a starter. Um, is this the way they're going to start doing contracts now for superstar
Well, I
players? Try and lock them up 10 years?
I think that they're scared that if they don't do that, then players are going to start exercising their options elsewhere. I really believe that. Um, to be
Yeah, but
completely honest, I love this game. I love everything about this game, but I think that this is completely asinine because you don't know. Patrick Mahomes has had an incredible first two seasons to his career, and I
mhm.
don't see that there's any evidence at all that says that's going to change. But this is a violent game. You don't know what's going to happen, and 10 years is a
Yeah.
long time to be tied down to a four a $530 million contract. You're talking about bankrupting a franchise if anything happens.
Well, and to me, it's again going back to what we were talking about to start the show. It's a 53-man roster. Um, you can manipulate this contract any which way you want. You've got to pay other players, and you've got other players in this team.
Yeah,
Are
your
you?
backup tight end is going to have to sell popcorn.
I
I
mean,
mean,
you can probably pay um, Kelsey the tight end. You probably could also fit in the receiver. But what if you get a Derek Thomas on this team now? I mean, you don't have one, but what if you get
you're
one?
not you're not going to be able to
Yeah. Uh,
because this is the only professional sports entity that has a salary cap.
yeah. Well, and you've got one in basketball, but you can play the luxury tax. Um, yeah. My brother pointed out he was injured twice last season. He was. Um, he was.
Well, a dislocated knee, I can give him
Well,
a pass on
and
that.
and here my thing is, like you said, you've locked him up for 10 years. Um, a lot can happen to you in 10 years. I'm
Yes.
not about to say he's a 1-year wonder.
No.
I'm not about to say He doesn't look like the kind of quarterback that's going to enjoy a long, productive career. But at the same time, let's just say he gets an injury that affects him, a torn Achilles tendon where it limits his mobility from that point
Torn
on.
rotator cuff and his throat
Uh,
and shoulder.
yeah, you know,
When
something like that.
you're the focus of an entire defense,
Hmm.
your perspective and your future can change on one play.
And, granted, the Chiefs are saying they have out clauses in it, but you still guaranteed him $477 million.
Yeah.
There's not that many out clauses that you're going to be able to exercise, especially early in this contract.
Well, if he's guaranteed 477, that there is no out clause that's going to get you out of that.
Yeah. Um, it's just I don't understand the length. I know why they did the length because of how much they're paying him, but I don't like the length because that makes it hard as a franchise to make decisions about your other players. There's nothing wrong with signing a guy for a 5-year deal because you have the option to exercise a franchise clause on him or franchise tag on him. I know the players hate it, but you do have that option.
Yeah.
But you've got to protect yourself somehow. I mean,
Well,
granted, Drew Brees has played here for 14 seasons. This will be his 15th season here. Okay. If we would have signed to a 10-year deal in 2006, we would have come out ahead on that deal. But you can't expect everybody to have a career like Drew Brees or Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I mean, even Peyton Manning, as good as he was, got the neck injuries, and the Colts had to part ways with him.
And then his career was extended. Another 3 seasons with
3
Denver?
seasons where you have one season where he was really at the top of his game. The other 2 seasons he was not. He got old fast, and of course he was much older than 36, 37, which is what we're talking about now with Patrick Mahomes.
Well, let me say this. In terms of what I see in Patrick Mahomes, I honestly and truly believe that he is the future of the quarterback position in this league. I really do, because he's conscientious. He works. He studies his craft, and he's gifted. He is unlike any quarterback. He is unlike any quarterback that I've seen come into this league in years. He's a rarity. I do believe that if he stays healthy for 10 years, then the Kansas City Chiefs are going to get everything that they invested in this contract. But that goes back to our original point. 10 years is a long time, and that's a big if. There's a lot of things that can happen when you're the primary focus of an entire defense.
I just don't. I don't like the length, and the length is because of the dollar amount, and I don't like that they paid him that much money at one time. I would have preferred a 5-year deal for.
Go ahead.
I would have preferred a 5-year deal for $150 million. Something like that.
And I think that the thing that I resent the most about, and resent is kind of a strong word for this. I think the thing that I don't like about it the most is the precedent that it sets, because moving forward, every franchise quarterback that has to negotiate a deal is going to hold this one up to say, hey, this is what they gave him. What are you going to give me?
Dak Prescott doesn't have a leg to stand on if he tries that, first off. No. And it's going to take more. It's going to take winning a Super Bowl for a guy like Lamar Jackson to get a contract like that.
You're exactly right.
After that, I don't see a whole heck of a lot. Oh, you know what we could have talked about real quick, and we did not talk about this at all. Um, our favorite punching bag, Cam Newton, went over to the New England Patriots uh, as a backup.
Yeah,
A lot of
they signed him for a washing machine and a bottle of detergent, didn't they?
well, a lot of people are assuming that he's going to be end up being the starter. And my thing with him is, I think they're fully committed to Stedham. I think is how you say his name, Jason Stedham. Stidham.
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 Oh, look what I got! I forgot to show this to the. So I'm pretending like football's coming. Well, hang on, I gotta go this way. Yeah, I'm pretending like football's coming. The football magazines are coming out. I bought my football magazine so that way I can keep track of players' names. And I'm essentially, I think I'm calling the Patriots quarterback that ball-headed guy who is in the movies that had to transport stuff all the time, beat the crap out of people. My brother would know who this man is, but I can't think
Damn,
of
what
who.
kind of movies you watching, brother?
That's the transporter. What was his name? A little ball-headed guy who kicks everybody's asses. I can't think of his damn
I know
name.
who you're talking about. Hang on, give me a second. Give me a second.
Jarrett Stidham is, and the other guy is Jason Standham or something like that. It's a
Statham.
There we go. I told you my brother would know this.
Jason Statham.
Statham, yeah.
I said it before you showed that.
So. Okay, I got you. Yeah, we got Tom Brady to cover. That's because he lives in Florida. You're a Florida man, so what do you know?
You in Brady country.
Yeah. So anyway, which is funny because he's got yeah, that's true because he's got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but Jarrett is going to be the starter, and people are going to be shocked when Cam doesn't get a chance to play and Bill Belichick sticks with him.
Yeah.
Simply because I think he brought Cam Newton in only as
same reason we brought in Bridgewater.
Yeah, and I think he may try and use Newton the way we use your boy Taysom Hill for short yardage stuff.
I don't think that at all. I don't think that that Newton's got that kind of miles left on the tires.
Oh, I know he doesn't. But it would be fun to watch. When he runs Newton on 4th and 1, or tries to run the read option with Newton on 3rd and 2nd and 3 or 3rd and 5. It's gonna be fun to watch this.
Yeah,
but it's gonna be it's gonna be Jarrett who's gonna be the starter because I think Belichick he's got a thing he's trying to prove, and
Belichick has got to think in terms of the future, and you're not going to build your future on Cam Newton.
No. Cam Newton, like I said to you a few weeks ago, Cam Newton's a very old 31-year-old quarterback. Like Indiana Jones said, it's not the years, it's the mileage.
I've said on this show a million times, if I've said it once, Ron Rivera, I love the guy. I respect him as a coach, but he used up Cam Newton, and he may have a good player or two left in him, but his career is virtually over at this point.
He got you to the Super Bowl. So how bad of a decision was it to use up Cam Newton? Wasn't that bad of a decision? He got to be a league MVP, and he got you to a Super Bowl. And if he would have had a better passing arm, maybe he would have won a Super Bowl.
If he hadn't have faced the Denver Broncos defense, things might have been different. But
so that's what you do. You go
with what works, and you go with what gets you where you want to go.
Well, in the old Cowboys GM with Tom Landry said,
Gil
we're
Brandt.
the ranchers, huh?
Gil Brandt.
Tex Schramm. No, Gil Brandt was a scout.
Oh,
Tex Schramm. Tex Schramm said, we're the ranchers and you guys are cattle. We can always get more cattle.
That's right.
That's basically your attitude you have to take with a player like that. And to an extent, you do the same thing with Taysom Hill, do the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Use them
Yep.
up.
That's right. And same thing with Drew Brees. I mean,
yeah. But I think Peyton, not Peyton, I'm sorry. I think Belichick, he's got something he's trying to prove. And he wants to prove that this team was more than Tom Brady, and I can win with any quarterback. And if he wins with this kid, Jarrett Stidham, it would be
vindication.
It would cement, especially the Buccaneers, to not even make the playoffs, which I think they should. But if they don't even make the playoffs, it'd definitely be vindication for Belichick, as he is the greatest coach. And I think it really would throw the balance about who is the greatest quarterback totally out of whack.
Personally, I think to all of those that think that the Buccaneers quarterback is the greatest ever.
No, you're not going to find too many in the Saints fan podcast, but I think I do think that you're. I think he's destined to have a Joe Montana as a Kansas City Chief kind of season. Yeah. I think he will probably
get close.
He's going to pull out some Brady magic. He's going to pull out some stuff and win some games. But I think in the postseason, that's where I think the Bucs are going to run into something that Brady's not going to be used to, especially playing in the NFC.
I've said for years that if Tom Brady had spent his career in the NFC South, he'd have been just another quarterback. That's why when he signed with Tampa Bay, I was like, uh-oh.
I don't know if he'd be just another quarterback. I don't think he'd have 6 rings if he had to play in the NFC.
No, not
because you're not playing the same damn 4 or 5 teams every playoff year.
Exactly.
You're playing a lot more teams, and you've got a much tougher gauntlet to go through in the NFC.
Who has actually posed a threat to the New England Patriots in the past 20 years? Anybody?
Baltimore is probably your toughest one. The Ravens and the Colts.
I'm talking about Manning. I'm talking about the NFC East.
Oh, wait.
We're talking about going
in the AFC East. In the AFC East, nobody. The Jets.
We're talking about going into the opening day knowing that you have an automatic bid into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if you win enough games, then you have a first round bye.
In the past 10 years or 12 years, let's go back 12 years, when Rex Ryan first took over the Jets, they did go to the AFC Championship game twice. They lost to the Colts and they lost to the Patriots, I believe, in the AFC Championship games. But as a whole, they only had to play the Patriots, I'm talking about, only had to play 4 or 5 different teams in the playoffs. They didn't have, Kansas City was not the Chiefs team of Andy Reid and
Pat Mahomes.
The Raiders were in decline. They had that one last run at the end of Al Davis's tenure as owner, but they were in decline. The Broncos rose up. But, the Chargers have never really been able to get over that playoff hump.
The Chargers make a strong season push and then bow out in the first or second round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
They just didn't have what it took to get past the teams in the playoffs.
Calvin, his old stupid looking ass can be in Dallas by week 5.
Yeah, well, how many? What week do we play them?
We play them opening week. That's the first game. We play the Patriots and the Buccaneers, and then we play them again.
Open with the Bucs?
Yep, at home, and then we go.
Oh, his ass gonna be on dialysis in week 2 then.
But I mean, I'm just talking about in general. You the Bengals were never a threat. The Texans were never a threat.
No.
The Jaguars were never a threat until 2 years ago. The Browns
And
have never been a threat. The
and
Bills have not won a playoff game um since no, they hadn't been to the playoffs. I'm sorry, until this past season,
yeah,
2018. I keep forgetting we're in 2020, but the Bills hadn't been to the playoffs since the Music City Miracle, and that
yeah,
was in the 20th century, end of the 20th century. It was. I mean, that was when the Titans went and played the Rams. So
that's
the
right.
Dolphins were never a real threat to them. So yeah, I mean,
When
you
you
would.
start the season knowing that you have an automatic bid into the playoffs, and if you win enough of those games, then you're going to get a first round bye. How hard is that to how hard an equation is that to succeed? I mean, that's the reason that I've said for all this time that New England Patriots have gotten skated into the AFC Championship year after year after year after year. They don't play in the AFC. They don't face what the Saints faced because they don't have to play the caliber of competition that the NFC has.
They don't have to go through a tough competitive division. They don't have to. I mean, their battle is not just to make the playoffs. Their battle is really to secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
Yeah,
They don't have to. Rarely do they have to go on the road and win 3 games on the road to go to the Super Bowl. It just doesn't happen for them.
no,
And that's just a reality because it is the AFC. Um, you always have at least one terrible division in the AFC, and it happens to be the East for the most part. But the Central, or the old AFC North, I keep calling it the Central. The AFC North is not that great of a division. It's really between the Steelers and the Ravens every year. The Bengals
yeah,
are pulling up the rear, and then the Browns are borderline Division II football. Because they've been so poorly. Well, they have been. They've been so
yeah,
poorly coached and bad GM. When you look at the teams that are picking in the top 10 for the past 10 years. Well, let's just go back further. Since the Patriots dynasty started in 2001, you look at the teams that are picking in the top 10, start counting the AFC teams in there. And
absolutely.
the majority of them are AFC teams. And that's just the reality.
And the Browns are going to be in there every single time.
Browns are going to be in there, but it's going to be AFC teams. The Jets will be in there. The Bills will probably be in there. The Dolphins will be in there. In the NFC, there's only a couple of teams that are going to be picking in the top 10 every year. Detroit is one of them. And probably the Redskins. But outside of those teams, the Cowboys, that's what's so funny about it. Every August 8th, everybody goes, "Oh, look, happy Cowboys Day. It's 8-8." I mean, that's, the Cowboys aren't picking the top 10. They're picking in the middle. That's when you start seeing the NFC teams coming in. Oh, yeah. You didn't know that?
No.
The official Dallas Cowboys Day is August 8th, 8-8. Official right now, the official Falcons Day, it will be July, it'll be Thursday, July 9th, 7-9. 7-9. That's the official Atlanta Falcons for the past 3 seasons. Hey, they were talking all kinds of shit about us. So, when we went 7-9 3 straight years. So that's what I'm saying.
It happens.
Yep.
We went
July 9th, official
7-9 3 straight years, and
yeah. Hey,
13-3 for 2.
You earn that. I mean, it just is. So, and that's going to be the difference. That's going to be the challenge. And then you got an older Brady, so that's going to also be a challenge.
I think that you're going to have to take into consideration. Please understand and know, I take absolutely nothing away from Tom Brady. He is a consummate professional.
Oh, sure you do.
Yeah, I hate the bastard, but He's the
Wakes
consummate
up next to a
professional.
supermodel every morning.
Uh, he is the consummate in all seriousness. He is a consummate professional. He
You're
has
right.
done a lot to advance the class of this league, and I give him respect to that for that.
I forgot. Actually, March 28th is Atlanta Falcons Day, not Thursday. 3/28.
That's right. Uh, I I take nothing away from what Brady has accomplished in this league. No matter what the circumstances, no matter what goes into it, when you can sit there and do this,
Yeah,
that's an accomplishment.
he's got the championship rings. The only thing that bugs me about the Brady cult is the inability to recognize or accept the idea that anyone else can possibly be in that same conversation. And that includes their dismissal of Drew Brees.
Exactly.
Whatever record Drew Brees gets, they're like, "Oh well, he plays in a dome. Oh well,
The reason that I
he
hate
throws the
Tom
ball,
Brady,
he pads
the
his
reason
stats."
the reason that I hate Tom Brady the way that I do, it quite simply, yeah, he is a constant ass. Um, Chad, oh my God. The reason that I feel the way that I do about Tom Brady is because how many times I've seen all these talking heads, these sports writers, these people that know the game and that shape opinions, how many times they've laid the career of Drew Brees on the altar of sacrifice to enhance the career of Tom Brady. That pisses me off. That angers me to no end, and I don't think that that's fair.
It's not just Drew Brees, but Drew Brees gets the bulk of it because you look at Chris Sims and his dismissal of Brees' accomplishments.
Chris Sims is a prick.
No, Chris Sims is a nobody, and he's living off his dad's name, and it's just it pisses me off because he is somebody who is jealous, and
Yeah.
you're not seeing him, Chad? Oh, okay, because I'm clicking on him and I'm putting him up there for people to see. But anyway, he's one of these guys that he's got to take a contrary position to draw and make a name for himself and get people to click on his stuff and read his stuff because he doesn't have anything unique or interesting to say. So he's going to go in there and say something outrageously stupid just so people will talk about him like we are right now. Yeah. We are way over time. I'm watching the numbers drop because we're almost 30 minutes over our limit.
Oh, well.
Thank you guys for sticking with us for a show that we didn't know what the hell we were going to talk about when we came on the air. We sure managed to fill up an hour and a half of this.
Yeah.
Sean, pay the bills real quick before we go.
Thank you guys for joining us on Under the Dome. We love you guys. We appreciate you people that take the time out of your Tuesday nights to spend with us, listening to us rant and rave and act like idiots. And every once in a while, I get it right. You can follow us on Facebook at Under the Dome Podcast. You can follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on iTunes. And you can follow us on Twitter.
Yeah. I had to adjust my name. My name's, I don't know, I'm going to fix it for next
time. No, it's on there.
It's at 79 Saints, but I don't have Alan Ulrich at 79 Saints, which I should have put on there. I just didn't do it.
Well, you got the important stuff. You got the handle.
That's right. That's right.
We thank everyone. Again, we thank everyone for joining us and staying with us and enjoying a Tuesday night with us. We talk about a lot of weird stuff, and every once in a while we get it right, huh?
Every so often. So, next time, we'll be back next week. Good deal, Chad. We'll be back next week to talk more about not knowing what we're going to talk about before it comes on the air, But we're going to end up talking about movies, music, wrestling, cars. Who knows? Um,
Probably music.
yeah, because we still have 3 weeks left before training camp. I'm sure they'll make some announcements before next Tuesday, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we'll stay on top of that.
Yeah, thank you guys for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.